With all the excitement surrounding the 2008 election, it might be surprising to learn that only 56.9% of eligible citizens, a little over half the population, turned out to vote that year. That's pretty bad, but at least it was a few points better than 2012. This kind of voter turnout puts us pretty low on the list of developed countries, which is not something to be proud of, but it also means that voter mobilization efforts have the potential to yield massive results. For example, Romney only lost to Obama by 5 million votes last time. It's a pretty small number compared to the 112 million still up for grabs. Get out the vote campaigns come in a few different varieties. The most inane and probably the least effective is that kind where Leonardo DiCaprio and a laundry list of other celebrities command you to vote from the TV.
Seriously, after all this, after this whole video, if you're not gonna vote, I don't even know what to say to you anymore.
Wow, Leo, that really hurts. Even self-aware and comedic campaigns in this vein, like the one Joss Whedon made earlier this year, likely don't move the needle all that much because they rely on old-fashioned techniques, namely a handful of righteous messages that include things like, it's your responsibility to vote, or your voice won't be heard otherwise, or it's a historic and or really, really close election. Now, while these are all really good reasons to vote, they all operate under the assumption of a behavioral theory called rational self-interest. For decades and decades, people assumed that if social norms about voting were heavily reinforced like they are in those ads, then people would just comply to satisfy their sense of civic duty. Unfortunately, when put to the test, these techniques came up way short. In a landmark 2008 paper from Gerber, Green, and Larimer, extensive studies found that theories based on rational self-interested behavior generally fail to predict significant turnout. This goes for celebrities talking to you through the TV or online, as well as phone banks, direct mail, or door-to-door canvassing. The problem is that plenty of people tell you they're going to vote, but don't actually do so when the time comes. But behavioral research can offer us some tricks to help. Studies show, for example, that if you ask people about their specific plan, ask them where they're voting or how they're going to get there, you could double or triple your effectiveness. Also, campaigners often tell people that every vote counts more when there's a low turnout, so their vote is extra important. But the research shows that people are more likely to vote if they think there's going to be a high turnout. In other words, if everyone else is doing it too. Okay, but what if you really wanted to boost the vote? Is there anything that would motivate people in a really big way? Well, let's go back to that paper from Gerber, Green, and Larimer, because I think it's really fascinating what they did. They basically conducted a large-scale field experiment where they mailed out letters to 4 different groups of people. The first was a standard campaign mailer that said, "Do your civic duty, vote," basically like those commercials we were looking at. The second informed people that they would be confidentially studying voter turnout for the election. Now, let me just pause here to say something that you may not know. In America, everyone's voting record is public. Now, don't freak out because you can't find out who people voted for, only if they voted or not. In fact, in the third mailer, the researchers did just that. They mailed people their own voting record from the past 2 elections. Looks like Robert Wayne wasn't able to make it out there in 2004. And the fourth mailer, and this is where it gets really interesting, takes it one step further. Not only did they send out people's voting records, but they also included the voting records of their neighbors so that everyone could see who voted and who didn't. Now, while the turnout of the first group, the group who got the regular mailer, raised 1.8 percentage points, turnout in the last group increased by 8.1 percentage points, which is a huge increase. And it makes sense. I wouldn't want to be the only one on my block who didn't vote. Now, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. It's probably not. But imagine if Facebook told you that it was instituting a flare on your avatar after the election based on the public record that simply said, "voted." Something that you didn't have to put up if you didn't want to, but couldn't put up if you didn't vote. Or imagine if it just put a big "didn't vote" after someone's name. I bet you'd see a pretty significant increase in voting across the board. Now, I realize that shaming people is probably not the best motivator, and researchers found that this method did receive a fair amount of backlash. But it is interesting to think about. Voter participation is something that concerns all of us because only about half of Americans vote every 4 years, and far fewer at local elections in between. I mean, just imagine if the over 100 million people who don't vote could be motivated to do so. The political landscape that everyone seems to be so tired of could be totally transformed. But, don't take it from me.
I mean, seriously, after this whole video, if you're not gonna vote, I don't even know what to say to you anymore.
There is a new Nerdwriter video every Wednesday, so if you click that box right there, you know what, forget about it. Can you see this? This is Florence, Italy, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I'm here with my parents for a day. I'm sorry the videos have been late. There's just been so much here in Italy. It's been so amazing. Anyway, I have to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. They make sleek, intuitive websites. You sign up for a year, you get a free domain name at squarespace.com, and if you use the offer code NERDWRITER, you can get 10% off your first... We'll make a Squarespace website, but look at this! Amazing.